Hello and welcome to the 10th video of the Project Sovereign series. Today we'll cut out the windows of the command tower as well as build the airlocks and start on the ablative armor plating. There's a lot of detail to build, so let's get started. Alright, now we begin adding fine detail to the model. This includes carving in windows and panel lines and all this other sort of greebly stuff happening on the ship. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, and I can show my technique for cutting out windows, which is basically to do a boolean with these window blanks in place, but not just any boolean. I need to be sure to do an impression, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So here is the bridge tower, and I'm going to cut out these windows. So I will convert this to a pro boolean. And I can start picking, but before I do that, I want to hit imprint. This way, it's not going to cut out the shape. It's just going to cut out the outline instead of making a hole, and I'll show you. So click, see how it formed the lines. And there we go. So that's going to work as our window. So now just convert this back into editable poly. And I want to select these. Okay, so these are all selected. So I want to make sure nothing's been selected inadvertently, and that appears to be the case. Now the fun part, extrude, and let's see what happens if we go with local normal. It'll probably be a big mess, and it is. So I'll just get to go with group. Just like that. And let's see, 0.05 meters is probably good. I don't want to make them too deep or it'll ruin the scale. And I don't want to make it too shallow, otherwise you won't really be able to see it. So I think 0.5, let's try 0.1. That's too much. Yeah, 0.5 is fine. There we go. And just make that official. And before I move on, there's a couple things I want to do. I want to grow the selection and get out my smooth. And just smooth all of this out. What that's going to do is it's going to smooth out all this stuff going on in here. So just collapse that. And I'm going to shrink, because at this stage I'm going to put a material on which will eventually become the window material. Just get this straight here. For now, I'm just going to make it a solid material. I don't want to get too carried away with it. Have no diffuse. And how about a 0.9 glossiness? Assign it to the selection. That should be good. And symmetry. So there you go. So that's our there we go. So you can see we got our little windows there. I am going to build some semblance of a observation lounge. I'm not going to get too crazy with it, but there will be furniture and such in there, but on a very simple scale because This is going to be a whole ship model, and I'm already taxing my machine as it is. Maybe in the future I'll create more detail in there, but for now, pretty happy with the way that this came out. Okay, so I finished cutting out the windows for the command tower. They're pretty much where I think they should be. They're probably not totally accurate, but again, it's pretty difficult to find decent reference. So I think this is good enough. I'm pretty happy with it. I also created the airlocks, and I wanted to put in a bit more detail, so I took some liberties as to what exactly these would look like. So I looked around for some reference. I couldn't find anything close up on the model, so I decided to have some fun and supplement it myself. So what I ended up doing was looking for a contemporaneous airlock, something that would have been built around the same time, and I found one right here. You can see on Voyager in the episode Prey, we got 8472 crawling on the outside of the hull, and there's a pretty decent looking airlock here. So I used this as a reference, and I put in some detail. Again, didn't go crazy because this isn't really going to be a focal point of the ship, but I thought it'd be fun just to add a bit more to it. Give it a bit more life and a bit more detail, just in case there's any close-ups, and even from far away, some of these details should show up. So going to keep moving forward with this. Almost done with modeling the command towers. I will do some of the armor plates and the lifeboats next. It's time to get started on the ablative armor plating, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a bit. So it's those pieces of armor on the back. I can show you in the reference. Right here, you can see just these little raised panels that are pretty much all over the ship. I don't know if they're actually armor, but I think that's good enough to call them that for now. So I'm just going to create that here. And it's basically the same process as the windows. Just going to lower this down. Go to this guy. I could just get rid of symmetry. Compound objects, pro boolean. Start picking. And imprint. There we go. Now I can start selecting these polygons just after it gets to editable poly. Be sure to get all the little corners that can get missed when you're selecting polygons on a shape like this. Well, that was fun. Actually, it was a bit tedious selecting all these polygons, but it'll be worth it because I'll get to have my ablative armor plating. So pretty much the same operation as cutting out the windows, only it's going to be extruding outward as opposed to intruding. So extrude, and it's at 0.05 meters. And I want to keep this really thin because if I make it any thicker, you know, like this, it's going to ruin the scale of the model. You know, I don't want this to look like a toy. I want this to look like an enormous starship. So I need to be careful and make sure that my scales are correct. So I'm going to see about this 0.05 meters, which is what I use for the windows. It's looking pretty good. Probably a little bit thin. So maybe 0.07. Yeah, just a little bit more I think is going to be optimal for this. And all the armor plating, I'm going to have to remember this 0.07 meters. I guess 007 is pretty easy to remember. So 0.05 for the windows, or negative 0.05 for the windows, and 007 for the ablative armor paneling. But this is looking pretty good. I'm going to accept this. I'm going to put on a symmetry modifier. And isolate. And there we go. That's looking pretty nice. So I'm going to continue on with the cutting out the ablative armor for the command tower. Going to get this finished. I'm going to wait until the next video to start working on the lifeboats because there's some problems I was running into as I was trying to do it. I have to get them to curve and conform to the body of the ship, for example. So It's going to take a bit of work to figure out how I'm going to do that, how much detail I'm going to put into it and all that stuff too. So I think that's going to be best left for the next video. But in the meantime, I'm just going to finish putting in all the panels for the command towers and just finishing up any little greebles or details I find along the way. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you soon.